Right, so why practice-based research for transformative medicine? So in order to answer that, we should really tease apart what each of those words means. What is practice-based medicine and what is transformative medicine? And I also will throw into the mix the buzzword that we have in medicine right now, which is translational medicine, the idea that somehow bench to bedside or bedside to bench, which is a nice buzzword, but I don't really think it's happening enough the way it needs to happen. Meanwhile, you've got transformative medicine where transformative change for the patients is already happening. You know, we don't have to kind of go through these years and years of inductive empiricist building up from the bottom to eventually figure out how to create transformation, which is the idea of translational medicine, where they're not creating transformation. We can start with people who already know how to do transformational medicine and look at what's going on. So it has to be practice-based because we have to work with the people who are engaging in transformative practices to figure out how it's working. So instead of trying to put together the little tiny pieces and build up so that by the time global warming has already drowned us and we're all dead from all the accumulated toxic exposures, we might begin to figure out transformation. Or we can start now with what we already know how to do in transformative practices like this practice. And so how do we do that? How do you have a practice go from the attention that's been given for years in learning how to be sensitive enough to the subtle fluxes in another human being, bring to bear a complex perceptual and analytical system that you get in your training, and shift the balances in a person so that they're transformed? Your attention in practice has been to learn how to do that and to do it well and to do it in a viable way so that you get through the day and you're able to do these things and you're able to maintain your capacity as a clinician to get this done. And that's what becoming a transformative clinician is about, and setting up a practice based on those practices is about. So then to say, well, we're going to have to start zooming out and looking at what we're doing, that adds a whole new layer to it. Now, in a way, you had that layer or you could never have done the practice, because you have to be very aware of what you're seeing and what you're doing and what you're feeling. And transformative practices tend to be moment-to-moment adjustment of what you're doing. In other words, you don't just take an algorithm and give the same thing to everybody who has these 3 lab results, like you may do in internal medicine or something like that. You're constantly saying, well, I did this, and then I check again, and oh, this changed. That means I have to change it this way. In the next person where you did this, it may change that way. So you can't be doing the same thing for every person. So you already are monitoring yourself. But you're doing it in real time in an implicit kind of a way. You're not stopping to record it. You're not stopping to measure it. And you still, when we determine that we need to measure this and show results that are measured by other than our saying so or the patient saying so, we still need to preserve the ability to carry on that subtle moment-to-moment sensibility. So the challenge is, how do you introduce observational and recording activities beyond what you already do while still preserving your ability to be sensitive and also efficient? Because in order to do this work, you have to have a practice that's efficient, that's frankly financially viable. You know, you're not a research institute. And if you were a research institute, you would probably perseverate on the research measures and you wouldn't engage in transformative practice. So we have to create a whole new thing. This is another really important point about transformative medicine as compared to symptom-oriented treatments. You know, we're not trying to get somebody to fix their shoulder or their elbow or their hip pain. We're trying to reorganize the whole structure. And you're doing that in your way, they're doing that in their way. And when you do that, all these other things will shift. So if you're really going to track what's going on in a transformative practice, you can't just do the chief complaint and track that. You have to look at all of the sequelae that ripple out through the system as you get, like you were telling me that you had some acupuncture treatment and then you ended up rethinking these vast areas of other parts of your activities, your professional activities. You had all these insights. And this is really important. And it shows that the system is really, really integrated. So this is why I say, trying to do translational research with mainstream medicine when they're not creating transformation, I always think of Walt Whitman. He said, wisdom cannot be transmitted from one not having it to another not having it. And it's just you can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again like that. Humpty Dumpty is broken. We have to start with something that is alive. So, and that's what transformative medicine is. So, practice-based research, treatment-guided research, based on what people are doing or having done with them as individuals. We can learn how an individual changes over time, and that they change in ways often more dramatic than they might change if they weren't doing transformative treatment. When you have dozens or hundreds of people who are all being tracked like that, that gives you statistical power to identify group differences, to identify critical factors, to identify clusters that will guide, that will give powerful information about what's going on. And honestly, that will give basic researchers clues about what they should really be looking at. I really think we can reverse engineer transformative medicine. That is, we're already transforming people. Let's learn how it works. Not only that it works, but the more measurements you have and the more people who go through this process, the more we'll be able to say, here's where the gold is buried. Go look at it more carefully. Go do an animal model. Go do whatever you want. And then that's translational research because you're starting from something that's already working. It's painful for me when I look at researchers who are doing lab research and they don't know very much about the condition. They haven't been with the patients and they just read something somewhere and they're spending years of research studying something which isn't even that real from my clinical point of view. So we can really make the overall research process, the clinical process will be supported. We'll probably be able to be more efficient at it, almost certainly, and we'll be able to give real guidance to people doing more basic research.